My name is Varo Nix, Senior Cadet, 3rd Claw, Scholarship Kid, professional witness to other people's terrible decisions, and today's terrible decision arrived wearing a fresh uniform, an oversized ego, and a grin so bright it could have powered the hallway lights. His name was Brack. Brack was from a high-gravity adjacent world, which is what his people called it when they wanted to sound tough, but still needed 2 hands to open a jar. He strutted into Combat Theory 101 like the room owed him rent. Professor Keth, our instructor, didn't even look up from the holo table. Keth was a Koran. Old, scarred, eyes like he'd watched entire fleets burn and felt mildly annoyed about the smoke. "Seat," Keth said, flat voice. Brack saluted. Too hard. His elbow almost hit the cadet next to him. Then Brack saw her. Everyone saw her. You could not see her. The human girl sat near the back, legs crossed, boots planted like she owned gravity itself. Hair tied back. Sleeves rolled. A calm face. Not bored, not sleepy, not nervous. Just ready. Her name was Lita Voss. Deathworld girl. Human. Terra. If you are unfamiliar with humans, here is the simplest explanation. Humans are what happens when a planet tries to kill a species every single day, and fails. Repeatedly. For a very long time. They evolved in storms, toxins, predators, diseases, and absurd weather. Their oceans eat ships. Their animals have teeth in places that should not have teeth. Their plants sometimes fight back. Their own bodies run on controlled chemical explosion. And if you tell a human, that's impossible, they treat it like an invitation. So yes, human cadets existed here, in the Galactic Academy, because leadership decided the best way to prepare for interstellar conflict was to invite the galaxy's most stubborn survivors into the training program. Brilliant plan. Sometimes, Brack stared at Lita like she was a trophy. I watched his face shift through the classic stages of impending disaster. Stage 1, curiosity. Stage 2, underestimation. Stage 3, a bad idea, building a nest behind the eyes. He leaned toward his deskmate, a soft-spined rail named Mavo. "Who's that?" Brack whispered. Mavo made a quiet sound. "Somewhere between a warning and a prayer. That is Lita Voss," Mavo whispered back. "Karen," Brack scoffed. "Human, huh?" Mavo nodded quickly, eyes darting away like even speaking her name might summon her behind him. Brack's grin widened. "Perfect." Mavo swallowed. "Perfect for what?" Brack didn't answer, he just stood up. Professor Keth finally lifted his gaze. "Sit." Brack ignored him. "Now, I know what you're thinking. No one ignores Keth, correct?" But Brack had not yet learned the difference between confidence and stupidity. He would. Soon. Extremely soon. Brack walked down the aisle, steps heavy, shoulders back, trying to look like a hero from a war vid. He stopped beside Lita's desk. Lita didn't look up. She was flipping a small training stylus between her fingers, casual like she had all the time in the universe. Brack tapped the desk. Tap. Lita kept spinning the stylus. Brack leaned closer. "Hey. Human." Lita's eyes lifted. Slow, calm, dark, focused. She looked at him like she was measuring how much effort he might require. "What?" she said. Not a question, more like a polite command. A few cadets snickered. Brack puffed his chest. "We're doing combat theory, right?" Lita blinked once. "That's what the sign says." More snickers. Brack didn't like that. He wanted fear. He wanted awe. He wanted the room to go silent and respect him. Instead, he got a human girl treating him like background noise. Brack pulled a thin white stick from his uniform pocket. A literal stick. "I'm not joking." A stick. It looked like a small chalk rod. Except chalk had been banned because half the species in the academy had lungs that reacted badly to dust. So what was it? Some kind of training marker. Non-toxic. Brack held it up like it was a blade. "Back home," he said loudly. "This is how we settle challenges. First strike wins. Quick, clean." Professor Keth's eyes narrowed. The room leaned in. You could feel it. Every cadet, every species, every breath. Brack pointed the stick at Lita. "I challenge you." Lita stared at the stick. Then she stared at Brack. Then she smiled. Not a friendly smile. Not a warm one. A smile that said, "Oh, you have no idea what you just offered me." "You're challenging me," she repeated. Brack nodded sharply. "Yes." Lita glanced at the professor. "Is this allowed?" Professor Keth's mouth twitched. That was as close as Keth got to laughter. "This is class," he said. "Anything is allowed if it becomes a lesson." Brack lifted the stick higher. "Then stand up." Lita set the stylus down. She stood, smooth, controlled. Like a door opening silently, Brack stepped back, giving her space. Like he was generous. The other cadets shifted their chairs, creating a wide circle in the middle of the room. No one spoke. Not because of fear exactly, because we all knew something Brack didn't. Lita Voss wasn't the strongest human in the academy. She wasn't the biggest. She wasn't the loudest. She was worse. She was efficient. Professor Keth folded his arms. Rules. Brack, state them. Brack nodded. Happy to perform. First strike. Anywhere on the body. With the stick. If I touch her, I win. Keth's gaze slid to Lita. You accept. Lita nodded. Sure. Brack grinned at the class. Watch and learn. Yes. We were watching. Not for the reason he thought. Brack raised the stick in a high guard position like he'd seen in old arena vids. Lita's hands were empty. She didn't ask for a weapon. She just stood there, relaxed posture. Knees slightly bent. Weight balanced. Eyes steady. Brack lunged. He moved fast for his species. Strong legs. Heavy shoulders. Stick slicing toward her upper chest. 3 seconds. That's what the title says, right? 3 seconds. It wasn't even that long. 1. Lita shifted half a step sideways. Barely. Brack's stick cut air. 2. Her right hand snapped up and caught his wrist. Not a grab. A clamp. Like a vice. Brack's eyes widened. He tried to pull back. He couldn't. Humans had muscles that didn't look impressive until they were applied to your joints. 3. Lita twisted. There was a sound. Not a crack. Not a break. A sharp, humiliating pop. Brack dropped the stick instantly. His fingers opening on pure reflex. Face paling as pain hit him like a hammer. Lita didn't stop there. She stepped inside his space, shoulder close, and with her free hand she tapped the center of his chest. A tap. A gentle tap. But she tapped the exact spot that triggered his species balance reflex. Brack's legs betrayed him. He stumbled backward. His heel caught his own foot, and he fell, hard, flat on his back. The room exploded into noise, gasps, laughs, choked sounds. A few cadets actually clapped before remembering we were in front of Keth. Brack stared up at the ceiling, breathing like he'd been punched through a wall. Lita stepped back, picked up the stick from the floor and placed it on his chest like it was a little flag marking a defeated territory. First strike, she said. I guess I win. Brack's mouth opened. No sound came out. Just that stunned expression people get when their pride hits the floor before their body does. Professor Keth walked forward slowly. Looked down at Brack. Looked at Lita. Then Keth spoke to the whole class. Lesson 1, he said. Weapons do not matter if your enemy understands bodies. He turned to Brack. Lesson 2. Never challenge a Terran with a rule set that favors speed. Brack hissed, holding his wrist face tight. She cheated. Lita's eyebrows rose. Cheated. Brack sat up slowly, shaking. You didn't use the stick. Lita shrugged. You said if you touch me you win. You didn't say I had to let you. Laughter again. I couldn't help it. I laughed. A sharp, nervous laugh that escaped before I could clamp it down. Lita's head turned. Her eyes landed on me. I froze. Humans had that thing where they could look like they were smiling and still make you feel like prey. She stared for a moment. Then she winked, as if we were sharing a joke. My throat went dry. Professor Keth pointed at Brack's wrist. Medical. Brack glared. It's not broken. Keth's voice dropped. It can be worse than broken. Brack swallowed. One of the med drones rolled in quietly like it had been waiting outside the room the entire time. Which, knowing the academy, it probably had. The drone scanned Brack's wrist. A soft beat. Ligament strain. The drone reported. Minor tendon displacement. Pain moderate. Pride critical. The class laughed again. Brack's face went the color of spoiled fruit. Keth didn't even try to hide his satisfaction. Now. Sit. Learn. Brack crawled to his seat like a wounded animal. Lita returned to hers and sat as if she just corrected a spelling error. Keth activated the holo table. A glowing diagram of combat ranges appeared, showing angles, leverage points, strike zones. Today, Keth said, we discuss why intimidation fails against certain minds. He looked at Lita. Cadet Voss. Explain the difference between fear and caution. Lita leaned back. Fear makes you freeze. Caution makes you move smarter. Keth nodded. And Brack swallowed hard. Yes, instructor. What did you feel when you approached her? Brack hesitated. Confidence. Keth's eyes narrowed. No. Brack's jaw tightened. Arrogance. Keth nodded once. Better. And what did you feel when she smiled? Brack's voice went smaller. Confusion. Lita didn't look at him, but her lips curved. Like she was trying not to laugh. Keth turned to the class. Humans smile in many situations. Some are friendly. Some are warning signs. Keth tapped the holo table. The diagram shifted to show a list of indicators. Terran expression analysis, he said. A field of study that exists because humans refuse to be simple. A cadet from the front row, a tall Vorian named Salk, raised his hand. Instructor. Why would a Terrian accept a challenge with such an unfair rule? Kith didn't look away from the hollow table. Because the Terran does not see it as unfair. Sulk frowned. How? Kath finally turned. Because the Terran assumes you will fail. The room went quiet again. Sulk blinked. That seems disrespectful. Lita spoke softly. It's not disrespected, it's experience. Then she added almost casually. Also, I wanted to see if he'd actually use the stick or try something even dumber. A few cadets coughed to hide laughter. Brack's shoulders tightened, but he said nothing. He couldn't. Not while his wrist throbbed and his ego bled out in front of 40 witnesses. Class continued. Keth explained leverage, balance, disruption, reaction, timing. He made us repeat concepts until our heads hurt, but the room kept circling back to that moment. 3 seconds. A stick, a smile, a fall. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't, because humiliation does not disappear. It and Brack. He didn't learn the right lesson. He learned the wrong one. After class, the hallway outside combat area was crowded. Cadets flowed like a river of uniforms. Chatter bouncing off metal walls. Brack pushed through the crowd, arms stiff, eyes scanning. He found Lita near the water dispenser sipping from a metal bottle. Brack stopped in front of her. I was nearby. Close enough to hear. Close enough to regret being close enough to hear. Brack's voice was controlled, but there was heat under it. That was a cheap trick. Lita lowered her bottle. You attacked me with a stick in a classroom. Brack's eyes narrowed. You embarrassed me. Lita's face stayed calm. You did that. Brack leaned forward. My people don't forget insults. Lita tilted her head. So, what now? You want a rematch? Brack's lips curled. Not here. Lita's eyes sharpened slightly. Where? Brack looked around. He wanted an audience. He always wanted an audience. He pointed down the corridor. The practice ring. After evening meal, Lita stared at him for a long moment. I expected her to refuse. A smart cadet would refuse, but humans were not built for the smart option when pride was offered as bait. Lita nodded once. Fine. Brack smiled like he'd won something. Then he said the sentence that made my stomach tighten. This time he said, you'll use a weapon. Lita's expression didn't change, but her voice did. It got warmer. Softer. Almost friendly. Sure, she said. You pick. Brack's grin widened. Good. He turned and walked away, and I realized 2 things at once. First, Brack thought he was setting the conditions. Second, Lita Voss was already planning what pieces of him would hit the floor first. Later, in the mess hall, rumors spread faster than food trays. The human is fighting Brack in the ring. He's bringing a real weapon. She agreed. Why would she agree? Because she's Terran. That was always the final answer. Like it explained everything and nothing. I sat with my squad barely touching my meal paste. Mavo was there too, shaking. He's going to get hurt, Mavo whispered. Salk snorted. Brack. Mavo stared at him. No. Brack will get destroyed. Salk blinked. That's also what I meant. Across the hall, Lita sat alone, eating like this was just another day. No shaking hands. No nervous glances, just calm. I watched her for too long and she noticed. Of course she noticed. She looked up and pointed her spoon at me. Varo. I nearly dropped my tray. Yes, she nodded toward the seat across from her. Sit. My legs moved before my brain could argue. Up close humans looked fragile. No armor plates, no exoskeleton, no natural claws, but it was a lie. A beautiful lie. Her eyes studied me. You're quiet for someone who laughed earlier. I swallowed. Sorry, she smiled. Don't be. It was funny, I exhaled. He challenged you with a stick. Lita's smile grew. He did. I hesitated. He challenged you again. In the ring. Lita tapped her spoon against the tray. Yep. My throat tightened. He wants you to use a weapon. Lita leaned forward slightly. Yep. I forced the words out. Why did you accept? Lita shrugged. Because he'll keep doing it. To someone else. Someone smaller. Someone scared. And he'll think it means he's right. I stared. So you're stopping him. Lita's eyes narrowed slightly, but her voice stayed casual. Also, I'm bored. I made a sound I didn't mean to make. Half laugh, half panic. Lita chuckled. Relax. It's a practice ring. Nobody dies. She paused, then added. Probably. I stared at her. Probably. She grinned. Kidding. Then she leaned back and continued eating like she hadn't just casually dropped the word probably into my nervous system. I couldn't stop myself. What weapon will you use? Lita's eyes glinted. He said I can pick. I blinked. He said he would pick. She smiled. He thinks he will. My mouth went dry. You have something planned. Lita tapped her temple. Always. I swallowed again. What is it? Lita looked around the hall, then back to me. Her voice dropped. There's a Terran training tool in the equipment vault. Old style. Not fancy. Just honest. I frowned. What kind of tool? Lita's grin became that same smile from class. The one that made confident people nervous. A rope. I blinked. A rope. Lita nodded. Humans have a sport. You wrap it around your hands, you pull, you drag. Simple. Brutal. Fun. My mind tried to picture it. And you'll fight him with a rope. Lita's smile widened. Not exactly. I felt it then. The suspense. The creeping certainty that Brack had stepped into something far bigger than his pride. I whispered. What are you going to do? Lita lifted her bottle, took a sip, then said, perfectly calm, I'm going to teach him about momentum. And then she added, almost as an afterthought, and about gravity. My heart did a strange little jump, because humans didn't say things like that unless someone was about to become a demonstration. That evening the practice ring filled up. Cadets packed the viewing tiers, leaning forward, eyes bright. Even a few instructors stood near the back, pretending they weren't interested. Professor Keth was there too, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Brack entered first, stepping into the ring like a champion. He wore padded gloves, a light spar harness. His wrist was wrapped in a brace, but he tried to hide it. He raised a training baton for the crowd to see. Not a deadly weapon, but heavier than the little stick from class. Balanced. Solid. He twirled it once. Dramatic. The crowd murmured. Then Lita walked in. No dramatic entrance. No applause. No show. Just boots on the floor. In her hands she carried something coiled. A rope. Brack laughed. Loud. You're bringing that. Lita looked at him. You said weapon. Brack sneered. That's not a weapon. Lita's eyes flicked to the baton. Neither is that, if you don't know how to use it. A wave of laughter rippled through the stands. Brack's face tightened. Professor Keth stepped forward. Rules. Controlled spar, first clean incapacitation. No lethal strikes. Brack nodded. Fine. Lita nodded. Fine. Keth looked between them. Begin. Brack lunged instantly, baton cutting toward her shoulder. Lita moved, not backward, sideways. Again. Minimal motion. Maximum effect. Brack swung again. And again. Faster. Angrier. Lita kept slipping past the strikes, rope still coiled in her hands like she was waiting for the perfect moment. Brack shouted. Fight me properly. Lita's voice was calm. You're the one swinging like a door in a storm. The crowd laughed. Brack roared. And charged harder. And Lita's smile returned. That smile. The one that promised a lesson. She loosened the rope. One end dropped to the floor, and she stepped forward, straight into his path. My breath caught. Brack's baton came down. Lita raised her hands. The rope snapped upward like a living thing. And then everything happened at once. I saw Lita's wrists turn. I saw the rope loop. I saw Brack's baton arm get caught. And I saw Brack's eyes widen as he realized far too late that the human wasn't blocking. She was setting a trap. The rope tightened. Brack tried to pull back. Lita pulled too, but not like a strong person. Like a smart person. She shifted her weight, planted her boots, and used his own forward momentum against him. Brack stumbled. His baton arm jerked sideways. His balance broke. The crowd rose to their feet, and Lita whispered, almost cheerfully, here we go. That was the moment I knew. The next 3 seconds were going to be worse than the first 3, and this time Brack would remember every single one. He did not even understand how much danger he was in. That was the worst part. Not the rope, not the crowd, not the ring. It was his complete arrogant certainty that the universe still belonged to him. My name is Varro Nix, and in that exact moment, standing in the practice ring gallery, I realized something terrifying about humans. They do not panic. They do not rush. They do not blink. They wait, and when they move, it is surgical. Brack charged again. Big steps. Heavy boots. Baton raised high like a heroic warrior from ancient propaganda reels. Lita did not retreat. She stepped forward. The rope slid through her hands, smooth and alive, the fibers gleaming faintly under the ring lights. Brack swung. She ducked under the strike with casual precision, almost lazy, and in the same motion her hands snapped upward. The rope wrapped his wrist, not tight, not yet, just enough to connect them. For a heartbeat, Brack laughed, a loud, ugly sound that echoed across the ring. He tried to yank his arm back. Lita did not resist. She let him pull, and that was his second mistake. The crowd leaned forward. I felt my chest tighten. Professor Keth shifted his weight, eyes locked on them like a predator studying 2 different species of prey. Brack stumbled backward, overconfident now, thinking he had broken her grip, but the rope did not leave his arm. It slid with him. Then Lita turned, not a spin like dancers do, a controlled pivot, her boots planted, Her hips rotated, her shoulders followed, and suddenly the rope became leverage. Brack felt it too late. His arm jerked sideways, his body twisted, his feet lost alignment, and before he could correct himself, Lita pulled again, not with brute strength, with timing, the kind of pull that makes your own weight betray you. Brack's knees buckled. He dropped to one knee. The crowd gasped as one organism. Lita did not pause. She stepped closer, wrapping the rope around her own forearm once locking it in place. Brack snarled and swung with his free hand. Lita leaned inside his reach, so close that the baton in his trapped hand was useless. Her shoulder slammed into his chest, not hard, just enough. His balance shattered. He fell forward. Lita shifted again. In one fluid motion she slipped behind him, the rope sliding across his arm, around his shoulder and tightening near his upper body. Brack realized his mistake too late. His arm was pinned to his own torso. The baton clattered to the floor. The sound rang like a bell across the silent arena. The crowd erupted. Cheers. Laughter. Shouts in dozens of alien languages. Brack thrashed. Lita stayed calm. She planted her boot behind his leg and pulled the rope upward. Brack hit the ground face first, hard. The ring shook. His breath exploded from his lungs in a harsh grunt. Lita stepped over him, standing above his back, one hand holding the rope, the other resting casually on her hip. She was not breathing hard, not even close. Professor Keth raised one hand. Silence fell instantly. His voice carried across the arena. Yield, or continue. Brack tried to push himself up. The rope tightened. His arm bent at an angle that made half the crowd wince. He froze. Lita leaned down slightly, voice calm but sharp enough to cut glass. Yield. Brack trembled. His pride fought his pain. His jaw clenched. Then reality crashed through his skull. He tapped the floor with his free hand. Twice. Yield. The crowd exploded again, this time louder. Some cadets stomped their feet. Others whistled. A few instructors tried to look professional and failed. Lita released the rope slowly, letting it slide free like a snake retreating after a strike. She stepped back. Brack rolled onto his side, gasping, clutching his arm, eyes wide and wild. He looked at her like she was not human anymore, like she was something else entirely. Lita bent down, picked up his baton and placed it neatly beside him. Then she looked up at the stands, at us, at me. I felt pinned in place by her gaze. She did not smile this time. Her expression was serious. Then she spoke, voice carrying clearly. You brought a weapon you did not understand. She pointed at the rope still coiled in her hands. I brought one I grew up with. The crowd fell into stunned silence again. Professor Keth stepped into the ring. He looked at Brack first. Medical, he said. 2 drones rolled in immediately, scanning his arm, hovering silently. Then Keth turned to Lita. His gaze softened. Just a fraction. Explain. Lita tilted her head. Momentum. You taught it. Keth nodded. Explain to them. She glanced around the ring, eyes moving over the crowd like she was addressing a war council. He attacked forward. Heavy. Predictable. The rope did nothing by itself. His movement did the work. She shrugged. I just guided it. A Vorin cadet shouted from the stands, but you overpowered him. Lita shook her head. No. He overpowered himself. Murmurs spread through the audience. Brack coughed. Still on the floor. Humiliated but alive. Kath folded his arms again. Lesson 3, he said loudly. Never assume your opponent's tool is weaker than yours. He pointed at the rope. Simplicity is not weakness. Then he turned to Brack. Lesson 4. Arrogance costs more than pride. The medical drone beeped. Strained shoulder. No fracture. Recovery time. 12 hours. Ego damage immeasurable. The crowd laughed again. Brack closed his eyes in shame. Keth did not mock him. He simply nodded once. Stand when you can. Learn when you must. Then he turned to Lita. You are dismissed, Cadet Voss. She nodded, coiled the rope neatly and walked out of the ring like nothing extraordinary had happened. The crowd parted for her. Silence followed her footsteps. Respect, fear, curiosity. I felt all 3 collide inside my chest. Later that night, the academy buzzed like a live wire. Every hallway carried versions of the same story. The human beat Brack with a rope. She took him down in seconds. He never even touched her. They said she could have broken his arm. Rumors grew wings and claws. Some said she moved like liquid. Others claimed she could predict strikes before they happened. A few swore they saw her smile at the exact moment. Brack realized he had lost. I sat alone in my dorm room staring at the ceiling, replaying the fight over and over. 3 seconds. Again, 3 seconds. I realized something else. The fight was not about Brack. It was about the academy. About every species who thought humans were fragile. About every commander who believed technology mattered more than bodies. About every war general who underestimated a death world. I did not sleep. At dawn an alert chimed across the Academy network. Mandatory assembly, Great Hall, immediately. I dressed fast. Heart pounding. Something was happening. The Great Hall was already packed when I arrived. Cadets from every division filled the tiered seating. Instructors stood at the edges, unusually serious. At the center podium stood High Commander Rillick Zorn, tall, broad, silver-skinned, a legend of interstellar campaigns. Beside him stood Professor Keth, and beside Keth, still in training uniform, stood Lita Voss. The hall fell silent as Rillick raised a hand. Cadets, his voice boomed. Yesterday you witnessed a sparring match. No one moved. Rillick looked at Lita. Cadet Voss demonstrated something our military has been failing to teach for centuries. He paused deliberately. Control over force. A ripple of whispers moved through the hall. Rillick continued. Brack believed power was dominance. Lita proved power is restraint. He turned to the audience. Every one of you carries weapons far more advanced than a rope. Yet you struggle with balance, timing, and discipline. He gestured to Lita. This human has spent less time in this academy than most of you, yet she understands combat better than many instructors. A murmur of disbelief. Rillick raised his voice again. Therefore, effective immediately, Combat Theory 101 will include Terran physical mechanics in its curriculum. Gasps. Even Keth looked mildly surprised. Rillick continued. And Cadet Voss will assist in training. The hall exploded into noise. Cheers. Shock. Arguments. Oh. Lita's face stayed calm. She did not preen. She did not bow. She simply nodded once. After the announcement, I found her near the observation balcony, leaning against the railing, looking out at the stars beyond the Academy shield. I approached slowly. Lita. She glanced at me. Varro. Her voice was softer here, away from the crowd. I didn't expect that, I said honestly. She shrugged. Neither did I. Silence stretched between us, filled with the distant hum of engines. Finally I spoke again. Why the rope? She smiled faintly. Because it looks harmless. I frowned. And it's not. She shook her head. It is harmless. Until you make a mistake. I leaned beside her. You could have hurt him worse. Her expression hardened slightly. I don't break people to prove a point. I studied her face. Then why fight him at all? She exhaled slowly. Because someone had to teach him before the galaxy did. I understood. Brack was not her enemy. He was a lesson, a warning, a mirror. The next week changed everything. Training sessions were reorganized. Humans demonstrated grappling, balance, and momentum. Aliens practiced with ropes, staffs, and bare hands. Brack returned to class with his arm healed and his attitude changed. He did not challenge Lita again. He sat in the front row now, quiet, attentive, humbled. One day, after a particularly brutal session, he even approached her. I was nearby again because apparently I had a talent for witnessing dangerous conversations. Brack stood stiffly in front of Lita. She looked up calmly. He swallowed. I owe you respect. Lita tilted her head. You owe yourself discipline. Brack nodded slowly. Teach me. The word surprised even him. Lita studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded once. Show up early tomorrow. He did. Every day after that, Brack trained harder than anyone. Not to beat her, but to understand. As for me, I watched, learned, and wrote every detail in my private log. Because I knew something. This was not just another Academy story. This was history in motion. Months passed. The Academy shifted. New respect grew for humans. Not because they were violent, because they were precise. Then came the day that changed everything again. Emergency sirens blared across Station 12. A nearby patrol reported hostile contact with unknown forces. Unidentified ships, aggressive, unyielding. The Academy went from classroom to war preparation in minutes. Cadets scrambled to armories. Instructors barked orders. Professor Keth gathered us in the main hall. Rillick Zorn appeared on the holoscreen, voice tight. The hostile fleet is advancing faster than predicted. We need tactical response units now. Keth turned to us. Advanced cadets only. My heart slammed. Lita stepped forward without hesitation. So did Brack. Keth's eyes flicked between them. Then he nodded. You too. With Varro Nix, my stomach dropped. Meh. Frontline. Great. We boarded a rapid strike shuttle, engines roaring, stars streaking past like silver knives. Inside, tension was thick enough to choke on. Brack checked his gear silently. Lita tightened her gloves, then slipped a length of rope into her belt. I stared at it. She caught my look. Old habits. I swallowed. You're really bringing that, she smirked. You'll be glad I did. Minutes later, we dropped into chaos. Enemy ships swarmed like metallic predators. Sleek, jagged, and merciless, our shuttle shook under fire. We landed hard inside a damaged docking bay on an Allied cruiser. Smoke, sparks, shouting, and enemy soldiers pouring in through a breach. Not Brack's kind, not Keth's kind. Something new, tall, armored, silent. No words, no warnings, just assault. Brack charged first, baton ready. He moved better now. Controlled, disciplined. He took down 2 enemies cleanly. I followed, pulse hammering, my own weapon trembling in my grip. Then I saw her. Lita moved like water in a storm. The rope flashed. 1 enemy swung a blade. She ducked, looped, pulled. The alien crashed into another. She moved again. Another loop, another fall. 3 enemies down in seconds. Not brute force, perfect timing. The enemy regrouped. Advanced tactics. They targeted her. 3 at once. She planted her boots, eyes sharp, and for the first time I saw something fierce in her expression. Not anger, resolve. The 3 charged. She stepped forward. The rope danced. 2 fell. The 3rd got close. Too close. Brack leapt in, intercepting with his baton. Blocking the strike meant for her. Their eyes met for a heartbeat. Respect passed silently. Together they finished the fight. When the smoke cleared, the bay was ours. No fatalities on our side. Minimal injuries. Rilix's voice crackled over comms. Stunned. What just happened? Keth replied calmly. Terran training. Silence. Then Rilix laughed. A rare sound. Later, back on Station 12, we were hailed as heroes, but Lita shrugged it off. Brack stood straighter than ever. And I realized my role had changed too. I was no longer just a witness. I was part of something larger. Weeks later in combat theory, Professor Keth stood before the class again. Lita sat in her usual seat. Brack sat beside her. I sat behind them. Keth tapped the hollow table. A new lesson appeared. Lesson final, he said. We leaned in. Never mistake humility for weakness. He looked directly at Lita, then at Brack, then at the rest of us, or you will lose in 3 seconds. The class laughed, but it was not mocking. It was reverent. As for me, I closed my eyes for a moment and replayed that first day. A stick, a smile, a fall, and I knew the galaxy would never underestimate humans again. Not after her, not after Lita Voss, and certainly not after what came next. Because this was not the end of the story, it was only the beginning.